I recently read a news story that got me thinking. A citizen of Bengaluru has sued the municipal corporation of the city for 50 lakh rupees for emotional and physical trauma caused by the blatant failure to maintain civic infrastructure in the city. Now, while Bengaluru is particularly bad, it's not our only city that's currently causing us trauma. Almost all of our urban centers are in various stages of decay at this point. And I thought about the middle class, the urban middle class right now that's going to work every day, that's paying taxes deducted from source, that's paying GST on everything we buy. And at the end of the day, what are we getting in return? So I said, let's take a look at the actual data. What is the data telling us about our contribution as an urban middle class to the success of our country and what we're getting back in return? So this is that story. Recently, there was celebration within government because the GST revenue, or the goods and services tax revenue, reached a record-breaking 2.37 lakh crore rupees in April this year. That was a 12.6% year-on-year increase. So the government was thrilled. This is apparently it is surpassed previous collections and has made everyone very happy, because it's an indication that our country is doing really well if we are able to collect large amounts of GST. Here's the interesting thing from that data. From the GST data, it seems that Maharashtra and Karnataka, these are the two states that have the highest contribution towards GST right now in the country, thanks to the hard work of the citizens of Mumbai, Bengaluru, Pune. And what are these citizens getting in return? The great middle class of India, which is a significant demographic, has actually been crushed because it is being squeezed for that revenue. According to People Research India Consumer Economics, it's called PRICE if you abbreviate it, India's middle class currently comprises of 32% of the total population, about 500 million people, and it plays a substantial role in contributing to the country. The middle class salaried individuals in India are contending with the burden of direct as well as indirect taxes. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, India's IT rate is currently the sixth, income tax rate is the sixth highest in the world out of a total of 91 countries. So we have an elevated income tax rate. We have an elevated indirect taxes. So our GST on our grocery, on our tolls, on our restaurant bills, on our insurance policies, on our hospital bills is actually quite high. Now, how is the middle class coping with these increasing costs? Now, the cost of living has been going up, but salaries have not been going up. There was this one, one person who actually brought this up on, on social media, calling this the biggest scam that no one talks about, that over the last 10 years, Indians earning between 5 lakh and 1 crore annually, which is classified as middle income, have seen their earnings grow as 0.4% on an annualized basis. In contrast, food prices have jumped nearly 80% over that same period. There's another research, paper that has come out from Marsilius Investment Managers. Saurabh Mukherjee has identified 3 pressing issues currently that are reshaping the reality of the middle class. According to him, stagnant wages, because our salaries have actually not gone up. Automation-driven job losses. So more and more, as computer programs are able to do those jobs, AI is able to step in, more and more people are going to become obsolete and lose their jobs. And there's an impending economic slowdown putting the middle class financial stability at risk. So, for example, just like the introduction of Google Pay or UPI and ATMs have meant that we don't have to go to bank branches anymore. So bank branches need fewer and fewer employees sitting at those branches. That's automation that has actually made those employees obsolete. As AI starts to do more and more jobs, both white collar and labor jobs being replaced by robotics, more and more people are going to lose their jobs. Now, apparently, Mukherjee explains that as per the income tax data, like we've said, middle incomes have remained stuck at about 10 lakh rupees per year for the last 10 years. When adjusted for inflation, it means the actual income has come down because you're making the same amount of money, but your costs have actually gone up. And to cope with that, people are starting to take more and more loans. And that is really the problem. The other problem where the costs have increased is housing. According to the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, rent as a matter of consumption has risen to 6.5%, which is the highest in 2 decades. Earlier, it used to be about 4% of your total kharcha. Now it is 6.5%, which means that the amount of money every family is putting towards rent or paying rent in urban India has gone up very sharply. Another pain point, school fees. We've talked about this. There are previous videos that I have put up about the fact that in the last 3 years alone, there's a survey that says that school fees have gone up between 50 to 80%. So imagine you've got salaries that are not going up, that are actually shrinking, and school fees have gone up 80% across the board. That survey actually said that 44% of the parents who were surveyed said their children attended schools that were increasing fees indiscriminately without any logic between 50 to 80% in the last 3 years. Healthcare, hospitalization, doing basic blood tests, just going to see your doctor is increasing on an average 13% year on year. Compared to the global average, which is about 10%, it's much sharper as an increase. This is according to the Global Medical Trend Rates Report 2025. Now, a lot of Indians don't have adequate health insurance, and that could mean that if someone has a prolonged sickness, it could bankrupt an entire family. What this means really is that many Indian families are now taking loans. Now, remember, there are two kinds of loans. There are these secured loans where you're going to buy a house. So there is actually a house as security for it, or you're buying a car. So there's a car as security for it. And these loans actually show that income is going up. So people are able to buy and they're able to take themselves higher. But unsecured loans, which are personal loans without security, our credit card loans or small personal loans that you get on fintech apps, these are actually of a much higher interest rate, and it's normally used by people to bridge a gap in their salaries and their expenses. So higher unsecured loans or personal loans show that people are not making as much as they need to in order to make it to the end of the month. So a recent survey by a fintech platform called Saral Credit said 67% of Indian families have availed of personal loans recently. Approximately 53% of Indian young people are taking personal loans before they reach the age of 30. In addition, during the decade of 2014 to 24, the share of gross bank credit has increased from 16% to 32%. So more and more middle class Indians are now taking instant loans, particularly in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. There's an estimate of 15 to 20 million middle class Indians earning between 5 lakh and 30 lakh annually who are now relying on instant loans, and this group is predominantly in the ages of 25 to 40. And that debt trap, it actually puts strain on household budgets, it reduces savings, and it makes the family vulnerable to financial shocks. In 23-24, in that financial year, the risk of default among these borrowers was so high that the RBI actually said it will bring in stricter regulations to curb these loans and to make sure that they're not being handed out that much. Other evidence of the fact that household budgets are actually in pain, especially in the middle class, Colgate-Palmolive India Managing Director actually this week said more than 2/3 of urban Indian consumers are facing financial stress, and that's leading to a slowdown in consumer demand for oral care products. So people are buying less toothpaste and toothbrush. They're seeing an actual slump in that for the first time, and that actually means that people are being really mindful about where their money is going. Apparently, according to Morgan Stanley in a report that just came out, there's a higher uptick in household debt and a simultaneous decline in household saving. And this has sparked concerns of over leveraging. So basically what's happening is you're not saving as much as you used to, you're borrowing more, so the possibility of you defaulting on that loan is actually much higher. India's total household savings is down at 18.1% of the GDP, which used to be 19% of the GDP before the pandemic. Also, there's bad news in terms of jobs. Remember, I told you people are losing jobs? Companies are not hiring either. According to this report in the Economic Times, India's software exporters are also halting new hiring and adopting a wait and watch approach right now because there's a tariff war, because of a lot of uncertainty across the globe. Recruitment firms are now saying hiring mandates have been slashed. Talent demand is dropping nearly 20% between January and March this year compared to the previous quarter. So there's a lot going on in that job market as well, which means there are a lot of times, and what effectively that means is if there are no jobs, people are losing their jobs, there are no hikes, then you'll be afraid of switching from your current job and you will take whatever they're offering you. So you're working at a very hard space right now. You're paying tax deducted at source, you're paying GST, you're living in an urban center. What is the quality of life that you are getting? Let's first talk about transport. Let's talk about the state of our cities' roads, all of them. Bengaluru, Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Delhi, Gurgaon, Noida, Calcutta, everywhere we have people writing to us saying that they're constantly stuck in traffic, a small spell of rain and everybody gets stuck in that traffic. There are, actual, and I'll give you data of people dying in potholes, people dying because structures are falling on their heads. In transport, let's take a look at it. In 2023-24, Indian households on an average monthly expenditure for non-food items, the highest expenditure was actually transport. Apparently, experts attribute this to the fact that you spend more time on the road. That means higher fuel prices and very poor public transport system. Because the public transport systems in all our cities, blanket altogether, is so poor, we have to buy personal vehicles, we have to buy fuel, which we spend an inordinate amount of tax on, because our fuel is taxed, our roads are taxed, our cars are taxed. And it encourages personal cars owning, which is not a good thing for our roads. And there's just not as much investment and being pushed into creating public transport that is good and reliable. So, for example, in urban areas, commuting, which used to cost a lot less, has actually gone up to 8.5% of the household budget, compared to 6.6% on rent and 6.8% on durables. We actually spend a lot more on transport than we do on anything else. The average commute time, according to one report, has increased to 59 minutes across our cities for 20 kilometers. Employees spending 15% more time on the roads. So there's a loss of time, there's a loss of valuable productivity, there's a loss of actual mental health here because of the way our roads and our cities are designed. At least 462 people die in road accidents in India every day. Our Union Minister for Highways and Transport has actually accepted that he finds this particularly bad, that India has the highest rate of people dying in road accidents on a daily basis. Over and above that, cars have a very high tax. We know fuel has a very high tax. Toll collection in India has touched 64,809 crore rupees between 2023 and 24. That's a 35% rise from the previous year, because the government is also trying to make sure that the money invested in highways is actually regained from the people who are using these highways. But the money invested in highways is actually tax money paid by the people who are using these highways. So we're actually paying for highways twice over, and that is also cost that is coming out of your monthly budget. Now you might say that this is only for highways, but you'll also notice that in many cities, that when you're going from one satellite town to the main city or back and forth, you are on highways and you are paying toll, and that actually takes a chunk out of your monthly budget also. The other thing that I want to bring to your notice is the amount of time we spend as urban Indians, not just on the road, but thinking about things like water. Is the water clean? Is the water not clean? Is the air clean? Is the air not clean? Are the mosquitoes going to kill my children? And I just want to show you, according to a media report published in 2024, an estimated 40 million Indians fall ill due to mosquito-borne diseases every year. 40 million mosquito-borne diseases every year. 1,500 Indians die because of extreme weather events in those 4 months of the monsoon in 2024. This is last year. Then, of course, there's bad water. There is food which is polluted, which has pesticides in it, which is not being adequately regulated. After all of the money that you spend to sort of ring fence your family from the rest of the city, a mosquito could make your child sick. The air could make your child sick. the water could make your child sick. So you're battling a long, stressful commute on overcrowded roads. You're battling a housing crisis where affordable housing is becoming more and more difficult. You're battling pollution and poor urban planning, the lack of quality healthcare that's affordable and accessible to you, things that people can take for granted in other parts of the world. And then there's taxation without representation. So the very high amounts of taxes that we pay, we don't have accountability from our local governments. We don't have subsidies and relief that people below the poverty line get, or the rich who have access to tax minimization facilities. They are able to sort of work around it. Those who pay salaries are not able to work around it. And then finally, job insecurity, layoffs that we've seen happen in many sectors that we're currently working in is actually sending the urban middle class that is financially squeezed, emotionally drained, and increasingly exhausted across the board. And if we think about it, a lot of times we'll think that our life is very hard or your city is very hard. But if we look back, and we'll see there's a pattern here developing across the country of a lack of accountability on how our cities are run, how our cities are planned, and what sort of quality of life we are able to offer our families. It's just ridiculous. And it brings us to a point where we need to be demanding more from our local governments. Please leave me a comment in the comment section on how you believe we should demand more from our local governments and how we can make them act more responsibly with our money and our taxes.